Hello, it is Kate Pickford and Brandon Ellis, and this is our third video. And I am super psyched to bring you what we are bringing you today because it is just a bit of magic. Brandon has done magic. So to rewind what we did, Brandon is submitting the first 500 words of this short story for an anthology. And they have to be really punchy to get through the first round. And he had this great concept that he had written out. And then we talked about how to shape that so that we had more tension and we were hitting all of the things that we've been talking about in this series, which we'll talk about in a bit. But he and I talked backwards and forwards, and we talked about whether or not the voice was right and who the narrator was and whether or not he should try something different. And he took that third and first version to his beta readers and had them pitch in. And he's going to talk about what that was like and what he heard.
Hey guys. Okay. Hi, Kate. So what I did, what I did is I have a lot of beta readers, and about 20 of them replied when I sent two versions: first person past tense and first person present tense, and also kind of what I had written and then what Kate had kind of transformed and made even better. And of course, they all liked Kate's version, which was present tense or first person present tense, and maybe one or two kind of preferred mine. I don't know why. So what they also did, and what Kate kind of thought you sci-fi readers enjoyed, was more third person. And so without me saying, should this be in third person, a lot of them, and I mean probably 80% of them or more, replied with, how come this isn't in third person? Or this just kind of sounds weird in first person. Or one even said, isn't first person more for like kids novels and adolescents? And so
that is a good beta group you've got there.
Yeah, so they're very, this beta group is very sci-fi and very tech oriented. So what I ended up doing is changing it all to third person, and then I sent it off to Kate, and she looked it over, and then she put some corrections on it as well. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Oh, it is. So I am so happy that you got to test that. And I would say newbie writers, so people who aren't in your place at all, because you've got so many books under your belt, they don't think that they can spend the time to do tests and to do that kind of test and run it by your people. So to get just 500 words and run it by your group, that is just a fantastic way to get answers immediately and then just change what you're doing. So I love that you did that. I asked Brandon's permission to read these two versions that we have, the first one that he wrote, which was in first, and now the one that's in third. And then we're going to talk about structure, but I wanted him to hear it from another voice. So I am going to be looking at the screen up here. If my eye line is weird, it's because I've got two screens. But okay, so here's the first one. And this is in first. Tell me, Brandon, if I disappear off the screen, because I now can't see you.
Okay, you're on the screen. You're right there.
Okay. So here is the first one that is in first person. They call me Trace Arrow, Space Templar, Petty Officer, Second Class. Today and every day for the past 2 weeks, they've atomized me into the blue line in order to save humanity. I'm the only blue liner that has survived more than 3 jumps, notching 13 under my belt. So far, the blue line spatial scientists haven't figured out why I've lived through every jump. Neither have I. Blue surrounded me and carried me along in a wave. My skin crawled with electric sensations zapping me every few seconds. I convulsed, twitching and turning in pain, my gut spasming. A scream escaped my throat as I cringed in agony. I landed in my body, my chest arching involuntarily. Sucking in air as if someone held me underwater, I bolted to a sitting position and blinked my eyes, trying to clear my blurred vision. Sweat dripped down my face and off the tip of my nose. Another successful jump. Thank God. This made 14. I was in bed like always and threw the sheets off. Out the sleeping quarters port window, an icy Pluto glared back at me, her white aura spreading out far and wide, attempting to cover the blinking stars in the black expanse beyond. In the corner sat my 2-tier gear locker. Next to it, a holomonitor attached to the wall with the rest of the walls in the room bare. A deactivated vac bot butted up against my bedside table, and with one word I could turn it on, and the Hydra Moon marble floor would sparkle. But no time for that. I eyed a clear orb that hovered near the ceiling. Ayana, what's the date and time? Ayana glowed and lowered in her hover. Good morning, Trace. March 4th, 2323, 0600 hours. For 14 days and 14 jumps, the scientists have shot me through the blue line frequency, and each time I wake up 2 years in the past, in this exact date and time, and at my old post, stationed on Space Templar Kuiper Belt HQ, Substation 9, orbiting Chiron, a Pluto moon. I didn't come to Project Blue Line. They came to me to stop an unwinnable war that stripped the solar system of all Space Templars. I was the last. They had no choice but to take me from the front lines to the blue line. We Templars carried a certain skill, the sight, a way to bend physics. To most, it looks like magic. To us, it's a practiced skill taught by the masters, nothing magical. But why did Project Blue Line choose me? I married an important woman 9 years ago, a senator representing the Kuiper Belt for the United Earth Alliance. A biochip stored in her occiput happened to start this war. At around 1600 hours today, the targets would cut that chip out of my wife's skull, killing her. Then they'd turn the gun on my daughter next, ending her life. Project Blue Line had pegged me as having a conflict of interest, too emotionally tied to the victims. Not anymore. Locker open. The locker clicked open. I suited up in my Space Templar armor fatigues, snagged my utility belt, and grabbed my Beretta P9 plasma gun and holstered it to my side. So this is just terrific. We know lots about what's going on. We know lots about this character. We've got conflict. We've got goals. But there's a lot going on that maybe we don't want to see. And I suggested to Brandon that maybe he wanted to shift the focus. So we told a mini story about how he gets through the blue line and why. So to bring this into a simpler kind of story, but make sure that we've got all the things we're looking for: an opening hook, rising tension, a question asked, a question answered, a goal, an obstacle, a protagonist, an antagonist, and a closing hook. And he's got all of those here, but they're just a little bit mixed in with stuff that we don't care about. So let's look at what he did next. So this is the one in third, and I think this has a kind of magic to it. See what you think. Trace Arrow, Space Templar, Petty Officer Second Class, stood naked in the cocoon. Today, like every day for the last 2 weeks, they'd atomized him in the blue line in order to save humanity. He was the only blue liner who'd survived more than 3 jumps. The blue line spatial scientists hadn't been able to figure out why the beam hadn't disintegrated him. He knew why, but he kept his mouth shut. Rose and Senna's lives outweighed the scientists' need to know. Agent Reeves lowered the galvanized Neuraline helmet over Trace's skull and secured the molecular pneumatic tubes to the exterior. Reeves gave him the thumbs up. Trace would have done the same, but his hands were strapped to the cocoon's side walls with thick leather straps. The same with his feet. The mouthguard was the last piece of equipment Reeves installed. Then the blue line hummed and he blasted off on a ride on the frequency. Blue enveloped Trace and carried him along in a wave. His skin cooled with electricity, zapping him every few seconds. He convulsed, twisted, turned in pain, his gut spasming. He screamed, he cringed, he curled in on himself, every atom of his body threatening to come apart and stay that way. And then As with the last 13 jumps, he landed in his body, his chest arching involuntarily, sucking in air as if someone held him underwater for several minutes. He bolted to a sitting position and blinked, trying to clear his blurred vision. Sweat dripped down his face and off the tip of his nose. Another successful jump. He sighed. That made 14. Out the sleeping quarters port window, an icy Pluto glared back at him, her white aura spreading out far and wide, attempting to cover the blinking stars in the black expanse beyond. A clear orb hovered near the ceiling. Ayana, what's the date and time? Ayana glowed and moved closer. Good morning, Trace. March 5th, 2123, 0600 hours. For 14 days and 14 jumps, the scientists had shot him through the blue line frequency, and each time he woke up 2 years in the past at this exact date and time. At his old post, stationed on Space Templar Kuiper Belt HQ Substation 9, orbiting Charon, a Pluto moon. He hadn't come to Project Blue Line. They'd come to him. He was a nobody, a nothing, a low achiever clawing his way around the lower echelons of Templar life. But he'd married Rose Agnew, senator for the Kuiper Belt of the United Earth Alliance. She was a bigwig, a trendsetter, a real-life hero. Or traitor, depending on who you talk to. According to their intel, a biochip stored in her occiput started this war. Trace called bullshit. Not that they'd listen to him. They only wanted him because he was their last resort and happened to be the only one who could survive the blue line. At 0800 hours today, the JupSat Confederation would cut that chip out of his wife's skull, then turn a gun on his daughter. The Blue Liners wanted Trace to track the JupSat assassins and retrieve the chip. They had their mandate, he had his. So listen to that. Listen to all the things that are going right in this. How did that sound, Brandon? Did you enjoy that? Or was that horrible to listen to somebody else?
No, that sounds
Sometimes
fantastic.
It's really hard to hear your own work coming out of someone else's mouth, right?
But it sounded really good coming out of your mouth, especially with your accent. I love
Americans are very kind. So look at all the things that we have got going on here. Right up, we've got an opening hook that is killer. And they're not so different in the two. So he is shot through the blue line in order to save humanity. So we've got super high stakes and a great opening hook. Then we've got the fact that not only is he the only one who has survived more than 3 jumps, he knows why, and his bosses don't know why. Yeah. So now we've already got conflict. We've already got, maybe they are the antagonist. We're not entirely sure, but we're going to have layers and layers of different antagonists pushing against your main protagonist's misbelief. And his misbelief is in here. Yeah. He is a nobody scrabbling around the lower echelons of Templar life. They only want him because he can jump through the blue line, and his wife is the one who started this war with this chip in her head. And what he wants and what they want are opposed. So we've got tension within the first 2 paragraphs. We've got enough tension that we have to keep reading. And then what we did, what Brandon decided to do was to emphasize the technology of the jump and the physicality of the jump. And he layered in lots of sense data about what it felt like for this character to go through that jump. In the original version, that was pared down to a jump with some physical characteristics, and the emphasis was at the other end where he spent time getting things out of his locker. And we just ditched that. We ditched the locker stuff and focused on this jump. Because the jump is the thing that is really saving his life and will help him save his wife's life, which is why we want to put the focus on the jump. And then we've got this beautiful image of Pluto, and we've got new technology at the other end, which is really cool. I don't know if I said Ayana right. I hope that was right.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, and we've got a ticking clock. So we know when he lands, we've got the date and time when he lands, and we've got the date and time when his wife is going to die.
Yeah.
So ticking clock right away, great urgency. And we know that there are assassins. We know that the agency believes that his wife was a traitor, and he doesn't. And so even though he is a nobody and a nothing, he is going to go against his bosses to save his wife and daughter. One of my suggestions for the second piece for Brandon was to name the war and give it a big, big name, so that it's clear that this is, the last great intergalactic war of whatever it is. Just so we bring attention to that moment. But we've got an opening hook, we've got rising tension throughout this, we've got a goal, we've got an obstacle, we've got a question answered. He is the person who has been coming through the blue line successfully. We've got questions asked about what's going to happen next, whether or not he's going to be able to find the assassins. And we've got this fantastic closing hook. They had their mandate, he had his.
Yeah.
So I think this is terrific. So Brandon, tell me what you think about this second piece. Tell me how it feels to you. Is it hitting the notes you want it to hit?
Yes, it is. And it's actually helped me with the next. I've already written like 2,000 more words, so
okay.
it's really cool. And things changed a little bit because the first one, I didn't know how I was going to make, because I wanted the antagonist to be the people he's working for.
Great.
With
Great.
this one, because you helped me fix it up to where this one I can totally see how they are. So the whole issue with this war was in her chip is information on a location of, an artifact.
Yep.
And she doesn't want anybody to see it. It's new information to her. She doesn't want anybody to see it. But the people that Trace is working for, we're also going to somehow take it from her, and the assassins got there before them. But his whole idea now is to keep his wife and daughter alive, kill the assassins, and get the heck out of Dodge. So I'm going to have, so during this thing, have you seen, I forget what it's called, kind of like a Groundhog's Day thing, where he's going to, so the first attempt, he's not going to be able to make it in time again. And they're going to pull him back because he's able to keep his daughter alive. And so when they pull him back, he'll go through some emotional thing. He'll also talk about, how he does think he's unintelligent, why he can't just figure this out, why can't he just get there soon enough, and blah, blah, blah. And so, and it's also going to talk about why he knows he can live through these. And there's going to be there's a tie. There's a tie between his family and the way he can live through this. But where was I going? Oh, so I'm going to do several, like 3 or 4 attempts where then he gets pulled back. I don't know if they can pull him back. I'm thinking that they can't pull him back, but this blue line has a timeline to itself. So maybe it'll only last like 20 hours, and then it pulls back.
Yeah, so it's got a ticking clock in there. That's great.
So
really great.
There's that. So I'm gonna do that. I think I'm gonna do the timeline within the timeline. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Awesome. So the great things that I'm hearing are each time he fails, he is doubling down on his misbelief. He's proving to himself, as he goes through these trials, he's proving to himself, I'm a failure. And at the end, he will absolutely succeed. And he will, everything will be blown open and he won't be a failure anymore. But throughout the story with the misbelief, he gets pushed by the plot and tested and fails.
Yes.
And then he rises again and fails.
Yeah.
The repeated the Greyhound Day thing, Greyhound.
Groundhog.
Groundhog. That's Greyhound Day, right? That's a movie. Um, so Groundhog Day is very much a sci-fi trope, right? Time travel. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking about 12 Monkeys,
Oh
which
yeah.
is just fantastic. That's just
Fantastic movie.
great. Like, and he gets pulled back, right? Gets pulled back and has failed and can't do things and ends up in that gloopy state where he's back with the horrible people who are sending him through time. At Doctor Who, there's that great, I don't know if you like Doctor Who, but there's a great
Oh yeah.
episode where Rose goes back to save her father, and then crosses her own timeline, which is against the rules. And when she crosses her own timeline, makes a break in space and time, and then these creatures come through to, these big dragon-like creatures come through to fix the hole in space and
Oh,
time.
that's
But
cool. I didn't see that one.
yeah, it's really, really super cool. And it's all because she wanted to see her father. And you've got this thing where he wants to save his family.
And when he does, it's when
Mhm.
when it changes the future, so it's going to stop. It's going to be like he's going to be waiting to be taken back. But
Well, it's really interesting because if she's still got this chip in her head, then where can they go and what does she know, and what happens with the chip now, and is
yeah,
war still imminent? I mean, you set up some great problems to solve.
yeah. So
Really great.
have you seen Edge of Tomorrow with Emily Blunt and Tom Cruise?
No, no.
Oh, it's
I'm gonna
really
write
good
it
too.
down.
It's like a sci-fi Groundhog's Day, like with
Okay.
sci-fi. It's really good.
All right, I'll take a look.
So
Yeah. So is this going to, so once you write the short story, which sounds dynamite, by the way, are you going to turn this into a novel? Is this going to be like an intro to a novel?
I'm wondering if I can just make a bunch of short stories with it.
Really?
I don't know if that's a good idea though. Because the reason why is because I have so many novels that I'm writing
Mm.
that I can only put about 500 words a day into this. I shouldn't say
Because
I
you're
shouldn't.
writing so many novels?
Well, I shouldn't say I'm writing so many novels. I have so many series planned. So I got the series with Nathan Van Winkle. His name is not Nathan. I call him Nathan constantly. With William Van Winkle, we're
Yeah.
doing this sci-fi together, so near future sci-fi. I call it a
He's a good
techno
guy.
thriller. I call it techno thriller. And then I have my next techno thriller, which I'm going to make it like 12 books. So, but I love this short story that I'm going to probably write like 500 words a day in it. And maybe
Okay.
it'll just turn into a book, maybe a standalone. I don't know.
I love it. I think it's got so much potential. It really does. I know you're super, super busy. I really, really am so grateful to you for doing this with me
Yeah.
because people love the interactive nature. They like these the best, I think. They like seeing two writers bouncing ideas off each other and talking. If after you've got a few more words you wanted to come back and talk again, I would be
Yeah,
so happy to talk to
I'm
you again.
all up for that. I'm totally for that.
Okay. If
Okay.
you don't mind us following you on this journey, we would love to follow you on this journey.
Perfect. I would be super happy for that. So do you want me
Okay.
to fix up the next 500 words and send it to you?
Yeah. I
Okay.
would be psyched. I'd be psyched to do that.
Okay, and then you'll just make it way better. It's gonna be awesome.
No, then we'll talk about how do we, because you could see how all of the ideas were in there. And what we did was prioritize stuff and make it so that it was as tense and driven as we could make it, right?
Yes.
So that will happen, or it will just be like, dude, you're on fire. Because sometimes that happens.
Yeah, we'll
Or it
see.
just depends on, how many times you can go through it before you send it off to your editor or your readers group, right? It
Yeah.
depends on who you've got to. I would really like to encourage any writers who are watching this to build yourself a community of like-minded writers who you trust and who know what they're doing, and talk to them about your work. Doing swaps is really great. This kind of thing is like magic. I think this is a kind of magic, and it really, really inspires me. So I'm thrilled that Brandon agreed to do this.
And one way I got all my beta readers, because I have a lot,
Yeah.
and what I do is I make sure they're good. So if so, I have about 30 really good ones, 30 I can count on, and
Yeah.
they'll just ravage the final product, or not the final product, but one of the final products, and really help me out with it. But one way I got that is I concentrated on getting a huge newsletter. I have almost 10,000 people now, and
Wow.
so I have it on automation, and about on the eighth automation email, when I know that people are reading my newsletter, what I'll do is I'll send out a separate email that says, if you're interested in becoming beta, here's what a beta reader is. If you're interested in becoming a beta reader, I'll test you out, see if you're for a good fit and all that stuff. And I've gotten, I'm totally guessing, maybe like 300 people. It's been a couple of years, but 300 people.
Wow.
But I don't have that many. I narrow them down to ones that are really good. Because some people will just like write me back, go, "Oh, that was a great story." I'm like, "Well, you didn't do a thing. Like that was all you said." so those people won't work. I'll just say thank you, and that's about it. So that's one way you can get some beta readers.
That's fantastic. That's really, really great. And the way that I treat it, it's a lot like the way I treat reviews, is to think of it like a scatter graph. And there are going to be people who love it, and there are going to be people who hate it. But then there's going to be this cluster in the middle of people who are starting to say, so if you've got 3 people saying the same thing, this isn't working for me, they might all have different ideas about why.
Exactly.
That's not the important thing. The important thing is, as the writer, something is not working, and then you get to go in and fix it. So I think that that's super useful. That's really awesome.
Yeah, and unless you're the perfect writer who does no wrong, having beta readers that tell you that it's great is going to not help you at all.
Doesn't help.
No, not at all. There's no point. And I don't, it's great when someone say, yeah, I really like this part, but I don't like this part. But I would rather them just rip it apart so I can make it as best as I can, because I want to sell this. I want to make a living doing it. So that's what you need with beta readers.
Yeah. One of the things that I really like, as the journey of the writer, is when you get to that place where it doesn't hurt every time someone says, I don't like it. Because you remember in the early days when someone said, yeah, you're like, oh, just stab me through the heart.
Yeah.
And you get to a certain place in your writing career where you're like, that's awesome. Tell me why. Tell me how it landed, and tell me what you're hearing. And very often I find that like my voice inside my head is like, yeah, you know what? It's okay. And I know that as soon as I'm like, yeah, it's okay, I'm taking a shortcut. I didn't really think it through. The logic isn't solid. And all I need is, I love my editor and I really, really trust her. I've got like 3 great readers I really trust. And they'll come back with like, what's going on here? I'm like, yeah, I know. And then you just get to love that. You really get to love that as much. Okay, not quite as much as, oh my God, I love it, take my money, but almost as much as that, right?
Yeah. And another thing with beta readers is I wouldn't suggest getting that many beta readers. You want probably 5 really good ones. And because you would take way too long to go through your manuscript with 30 different ideas. But with my 500 word short story that I sent them, I think it was a week or 2 ago. It's super easy. I mean, that doesn't take any time at all. They don't have much to look at, so they don't have reams and reams of stuff to give you. So with that,
my publisher has got really good beta readers, and he parcels them out to different books to different sets of readers. And going through their stuff can take time. They do a lot of proofreading for me, but yeah, it's still great. People you trust reading your stuff, it's just gold, absolute gold.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, my dear. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Until next time, whenever you've got 500 words.
Okay, I'll be sending it to you probably soon.
I like the time commitment.
Okay. All right.
Bye, sir.
Bye.